Thanks, Marissa. Um, th this is Marty Olsen, and I'm going to be talking to you about CASAS, and this will count as your recertification training. So let's get started. You'll see there is a PDF of both the PowerPoint and the training links. So all the links that I'll be talking about are found on that one sheet, and Marissa will give you that. There you go. So nothing you need to have open right now, but it will be available for you later. So the objectives that we have today, basically, we want to review updated information regarding CASAS assessments. And we will talk particularly about those new assessments that have been approved. We will talk about the tools that CASAS provides to help to assist in targeting instruction and learning more about your students. And certainly, as I said, this meets your every 5-year recertification requirement. So who's eligible to administer these assessments? Staff who've gone through CASAS implementation training, that's a 3-hour training with a certified trainer, or staff who have completed the appropriate online modules that are on the CASAS website and very well done. And also staff who, as you are today, have attended a recertification training. The question might be asked, why do we administer assessments? What's the purpose of them? Well, obviously, the first thing is just to get some information about your students and to learn, where are they today? That's what we want to know as students enter the program, because it helps us to put them in the right class. It provides guidance for the teacher to know what should they provide within the class to meet the students' instructional needs. And certainly we can use that pretest to have a baseline, knowing where to give a post-test. And that post-test lets us know, did we accomplish all the things that we wanted to throughout the session? And finally, it is accountability to our funders, to the state. All CASAS assessments do measure academic skills, but they do so in the context of common life and work scenario. The idea being that if it's familiar scenarios for students, it's more relatable. These assessments can be given individually, they can be given to groups. Up to 20, 25 probably would be better, not to go higher than that. There are sample test items. We'll take a look at those that help with test preparation and help to know what's going on or what is in the tests. The paper tests are reusable, so that makes them cost effective. I realize that would mean this year, as we look at new tests, there is going to be some cost involved in purchasing new tests. And then e-tests, which are delivered on the computer, eventually will reduce staff time. It's going to take time for staff to catch on, but once they get things worked out and understand the process, it should reduce your staff time. And they are there's a per test cost to those, and they can be used for remote testing. One thing to note about if you already have CASAS e-tests in your account, the new tests will work just as well as the old ones with your currently purchased e-tests. A reminder that CASAS is a standardized test. Every student should have the same experience every time they take the test. Basically, that's what we're saying with standardized. So you need to use the proper timing. You need to use the script that's provided. Read that script. Use it with all students. You can help students with their demographics, but nothing else. No indications of whether answers are right or wrong. You can't go through test questions prior to the session. There are practice items that are designed for that, and those you can use. Obviously, technology needs to be put away. You can't have breaks in the middle of a testing session. So between tests, sure, but not in the middle of a test. And don't review correct test answers with the learners, which tends to be one of the hardest things because they want to know how they did. But you can't go over specific test questions. The proctor is probably one of the most important, it is the most important person as they administer the test. And there are many things that they should be aware of. There is a proctor paper test certification that is now available on the CASAS training site. There has been the e-test. If you are doing e-test, that certification has been available for some time, but the newest one is that paper test. So it talks about security and confidentiality. What should the conditions be in the classroom? How do you handle accommodations? And then the handling of the test booklets, administering the tests in a standardized way. And basically, what should the proctor do as they are monitoring the students? And certainly to be aware that cheating happens and what should you do? So there are many positive things in that proctor certification. And I would encourage proctors to go through that. One thing that is really important and should be made available to all sites where there is testing taking place would be each site should have that test administration module or manual. There are so many things in those manuals and they need to be available to the proctors. First of all, answer keys. So if you're doing paper testing, you need those answer keys. You need the scoring guidelines. You need the score conversion charts and the next assigned test charts, as well as the list that is going on. I'm not going to go through all of those things, but the test administration manual is one of those very important pieces of equipment. It's not really equipment, it's a book, but it is something that every program that is testing should have at least one of. As far as the test and scoring the test, you should be aware that scores are in basically these three areas. They can be below accurate, they can be accurate, and they can be in the conservative estimate range. So below range, those are scores that are not scores. You see their asterisks here, so that you can't report those scores, and you would need to re-administer a test at a lower level that would be more appropriate for the learner. The accurate range is where we want our students to fall, and scores in there are considered valid and can be reported in SID. The conservative estimate range is something that you need to take a look at and be aware of. If the scores have a diamond by them, basically those scores are the highest level or the highest score you can get on this test. What I need you to know is that if a learner scores in the diamond range on a pre-test, this test was too easy and you need to retest immediately. On the other hand, if it's a post-test and their pre-test was in that accurate range, what it does is it shows learning. It shows that the student has made gains. So that's an appropriate score to report and can be reported in SID. So what tests are approved. We're getting to where I know many of you are saying, I need to know more about the tests. Okay, so which tests have been extended, which are new, and then what do we know about those new tests? So as far as English language learners, we have in reading, we have the life and work. It's been around a long time. I'd have to go back to look at my notes, but it's in the mid 2006, 7, somewhere in that range when that first came out. So it's been a long time. So that one is sunsetting as of June 30th, 2024. That'll be the end. We will not be able to report those anymore. But to replace that, we have CASAS steps, both for reading and for listening. You can see here similar information. The life and work is going away, but you can use it through this program year, and then the steps is coming in. STEPS, first of all, it's an acronym, Student Test of English Progress and Success. Both the reading and the listening series have 5 levels, 2 forms per level. So that's a nice expanded test series. They are aligned to the English language proficiency standards, which are aligned to college and career readiness standards. So it's not like you have to learn a whole new set of standards. Just realize that what you've been doing, your work in CCRS, is work in the ELPs. There is increased focus then on content standards, and they continue to focus on the competencies. The CASAS competencies are still embedded in these test questions. It is multiple choice, so there are similar item types to what you will have seen if you've used reading goals. And the process of administering the test remains the same. Follow the same process. What you do need to know is you'll need that new test administration manual. So you've got the timing and some of those things right. So who should be given a CASAS life and work or steps? So these tests are only appropriate for learners for whom English is not their first language. It's only appropriate for ELLs who score under 236 on life and work and under 239 on steps. Once they've scored higher than that, they need to move to another series. Once an English language learner does get to that 236 or 239, SID will mark them with a level completion as long as it's a post-test. And that then it's completed, they're marked completed ESL. They get a level gain, but also realize that completed ESL is not a level. It's just something that has happened to this student, or they have earned. So they will need to have a new test, either in CASAS goals or table 11 and 12, as soon as possible. You won't be able to put more than 12 hours in their records without taking that new test. So as we look here at just comparing the life and work with steps, you can see that the original life and work had 4 levels, and steps starts here with 5 levels. They both scored across the 6 NRS levels. The big difference was the focus on the CASAS content standards along with competencies. Now they're focused on the English language proficiency standards with the CASAS competencies. And remember, ELPs linked to the college and career readiness standards. Here's just the English language proficiency standards that are embedded in the CASAS steps series. I'm not going to read through those for you, but you can see there's just those 3 standards, and they focus on vocabulary, on oral, as well as reading. They focus on understanding and analyzing what they've read. So all those things can be found embedded in the college and career readiness standards, so that you maintain your familiarity with the CCR booklet, and you're going to be in good shape. And life and work listening and steps comparison is going to look the same. Probably one of the bigger changes is we're going from 3 levels in the life and work to 5 levels in the listening steps. But the standards that they were focused on are the same 3 standards, the English language proficiency standards and the CASAS competencies. And here are the standards that are assessed in listening steps. So there are 2 standards, and they focus more on the oral and both presentations and understanding the information that is presented orally. So again, these are the ELPs, but they're embedded here in the college and career readiness standards. So this is a transition year then, as we look at some tests ending and some starting. Your program will need to decide, and hopefully you were in the opening session this morning where we talked more about that. There are different ways of choosing to do it, choosing to make that switch. And each program can make that choice on their own. The state did give permission as of November 1st to start using the new steps and math goals. Or math goals 2, sorry. So you can make your decision as to how your program is going to move forward. But the important thing to remember is that students who do have a life and work pretest should be given the opportunity to take, after 40 hours, to do a post-test in that series. It is okay to have both a life and work test and a CASAS steps test at the same time. What you should do to determine the appropriate level of CASAS steps is to first give the appraisal. We have been told by programs around the country that if people are testing on steps, when they're testing on steps, they tend to be a little bit lower, scoring a little bit lower. The focus on the content standards has made the tests more challenging, and that's okay. We can challenge our students. So a student could have a different English educational functioning level, one in steps and one that they already had in life and work, and that's okay. Now for ABE and ASE learners, we do have the goals series. Reading goals is still approved for another year and a half, and probably will sunset that 2nd year, so it'll be a little bit longer, almost 2 years. And the new test is in development. The new test that is already available and ready to use is the Math Goals 2. Math Goals will sunset as of June 30th, so you can still do post-tests in that one throughout this program year. And then at some point switch over to the Math Goals 2, which is approved for 7 years. So these are the 2 tests that I mentioned. better let you know what the GOALS acronym is. It's Greater Opportunities for Adult Learning Success. And the reading test is designed for learners for whom English is their first language. That's its primary purpose. Or for English language learners who've earned a 236 or higher on life and work, or a 239 or higher on STEPS. I am aware that some programs have chosen to move their learners to another series at a lower cut score, and that's fine. That's your program decision. I would recommend that you take a look at these tests, however, since you can see that, first of all, life and work scores higher, STEPS scores higher, life and work is lower. So your cut score maybe should be raised. Those are some decisions that you can make as a program, but I would say consider it. Both reading and math are aligned with the college and career readiness standards. So there's not a lot of change with the new GOALS Math 2. It's just got more levels. Also, the lowest levels of the Math GOALS 2 would be appropriate for ELs who are doing something with math skills and you want to assess those math skills. We'll take a look at what some of those lower level questions might look like. So just a reminder that there are now 5 levels in Math GOALS 2. It is aligned to the college and career readiness standards, just as it was, or the Math GOALS is. Similar item types, so not a lot of change there. It's just that it is got expanded content, which makes it able to more closely identify the needs of your students. And as I mentioned, it's the only CASAS math test that's available. So you can give it to ELs, and it's okay if they have an EL reading score and an ABE math score. That's just fine. Again, administration protocol remains the same. You can see here with the Math GOALS, Math GOALS 1 basically was only 2 levels, and the new one is 5. But that's really the only change that we have going here. You can see it still scores across the 6 NRS levels, and it's based on the CCR standards and the CASAS competencies. Here are the content areas in the CCR content descriptions that you'll find are being focused on in the Math GOALS 2, all very well detailed in the CCR standards. So same procedure for administering the test, no need to change that. Same security guidelines. If you're doing e-tests, there are pre-configured test sessions, and there are new booklets you'll have to purchase for paper testers. Okay, so let's take a look at some of the helps that are available on the CASAS website for you to understand what's going on in these tests. So these charts I wanted to include because sometimes it's really helpful for you to have a chart like this that you post on your wall if you are a tester, so that you have all of this information. You'll notice it's got the test timing, which is different for those of you who've been doing life and work for a few years. The test timing is different. These are the reading steps and listening steps forms. You'll see that they both have an appraisal and a locator. Those are 2 options. You don't do them both. The appraisal can be given either paper, or you can do that on the computerized version of the test. The locator is only on the computer, so it's a shorter test, but you can only find that one on the computerized form of the test. And then here you can see reading goals and math goals too, the timing there, and then as well as the appraisal and locator that is available for both of those. Also, you'll note that these both have this, and all four of them, the ones I had previously, show the scale score ranges, which are slightly different than what you may have seen in the past, which is why you might need to post these, because you may have had different numbers in your head for the different levels. Another thing that CASAS does is it gives a grade level equivalent for each of the scores that you might find, which is helpful as teachers look at what level are my students. Well, they may or may not understand the NRS levels 1 through 6, and they probably need to learn those. But in the meantime, the grade levels might help to indicate where they're going. And you'll also note on the right here, the test level breakdown, that the tests overlap each other. So the materials in a high A will be similar to what you'd find in a low B level, so that it makes it easier for students to move through the levels if you are building your curriculum so that they get to that low B curriculum before they move to the low B class or test. And here's the same information for the listening steps. Again, you can see the breakdown and the overlap of the tests and the grade level equivalents. Math goals too. It's not quite as neat as the other two were. What you can see is that math goals 2 score is actually a little bit lower, and it goes a little bit higher than we have seen in the past. And here is reading goals. And what you'll note is, again, those bottom and top levels are quite wide. So as reading goals is built, it will be 5 levels as well. So hopefully we'll see these breakdowns be a little bit more even. They do provide blueprints for all of the test levels. And there's a lot of information, and I would recommend that if you're a teacher, and if you should take a look at these. If you're not a teacher, let your teachers know that these are available on the website. You can see here that vocabulary is high frequency, 43%, 15% for text. Well, the first one was pictures and the second part was text. So vocabulary is very important. This is level A. And then they also do some details and numbers. But when you get to the level E, that 5th level, vocabulary is still there, about a quarter, but then they've brought in a lot of other information that needs to be, or content that needs to be tested. Details, main ideas, point of view, inference. You've heard these as you've done your work in the CCR standards. Listening, again, vocabulary is half of what they're talking about at level A, but then details and dialogue are part of it as well. Once they get to the level E, they're really focused more on that dialogue, detail, and so forth. So these blueprints really help a teacher to consider where to focus their instruction. Math. Math I find interesting because it's got the 4 different content areas, and you can see them here, and they're about 25% of each, close to it. And that was level A. This is level E, and what does it look like? Very much the same. So all of these are tested all the way through the, sorry. All of these are tested all the way through. And as you look through that, you'll see that they changed a little bit. If you look here, it was understanding place value for number sense, whereas we get the higher level multi-step problems, radicals and irrational numbers. So although it's number sense, it's obviously much more in-depth, deeper into the math. Some other reports that are available, I didn't put any of these in the PowerPoint, but they have competency blueprints. CASAS was built on the competencies. That's where they started. And so they continue to really feel that those life skill, the life skills need to be tested and need to help your learners to understand where they are. They're in the United States. So these competency blueprints can be very helpful as students, or as a teacher prepares and looks at what is tested at each of the levels of tests. There is, if you have TOPS Pro, there are individual skills profiles, which have a lot of information. I'm not sure these are ready yet for the new test, but they would be available for the older tests. Student competency performance, I believe this report is ready, so you can look at the specific competencies that the students do well in and where they might have some problems, where the things they got wrong. And this is a similar report, but it's by class, so you can see the percentage of the class that got each one correct or incorrect. So now let's take a look at some of the questions that you might see on this new test. All the items that I'm going to show you here come from the sample test items. These are not real test items. You can never project copies of the real test items, but these are available freely on the CASAS website. So that's what I'm going to be sharing here to give you an indication of what you will see in the tests as your students start to use them. The sample test items then are not real tests. You can't get any specific student performance information from them, but they are available for you to use to help your students understand how to take a test. So what should I do? Many of you are worried about your low-level pre-lit students because you've been using the 2728 for a long time. So you were familiar with it, even though you may not have liked it. You knew that it was good for your lower level students. Well, look at this. Here's a sample type of item using a picture, but this one is lovely and colored. So it's just a picture, and then they would have to choose what they're seeing. So they need to read a little bit in the case of this one, but it is a very basic question. How about this one? This should look familiar because there were similar things in the 2728. Just understanding, being able to match here the abbreviation with the full word. Number formatting, something that you would have done, or your student would have done in the 27-28. And here it is found, a similar item like this could be found in the new Reading Steps series. And pick another picture, this one black and white, but still they would have to match what this is to what they're seeing, or the word that they see. So those items, I think, should give you an idea of what it might look like to for your pre-lit learners. How about academic vocabulary? How do they assess that? Well, look at here. They're looking at a word provide in this case. This test item probably would be used for several different questions. The one I chose here was the one that focused on the vocabulary. But you'll note that they always underline the word. So in this case, provide is underlined. So that is the word that the student needs to focus on, and they're going to have to use context clues to figure out what it means. What I would look at this as a teacher, I would say, wow, this is a job search online. It's an online ad. I need to make my students aware of what it will look like if they go online and are looking for a job. So there's many things that it opens up. Sure, the academic vocabulary of provide, but also just being able to look at this test item. If they're familiar with items online, they would be more comfortable with items such as this, or something they might see in the newspaper. Again, this is academic vocabulary, but also you can use newspapers, you can use it, or maybe online things might look more like this. And you'll note here, they have to apply online. So that's another skill that you would be working with your students on, expanding the academic vocabulary portion of your instruction. Author's purpose. Why was this letter written? First of all, notice it's not a letter that an old time, what I might say is old time letter. It is email. And they make use of email a lot in these new assessments because that's the way we correspond so much today. So this one you would have to be able to look at email and understand the parts of an email, and then as well as read and understand. You'll note that they have the lines numbered, not necessarily important for this particular question, but it might be on another question using this same test item. Math. Can algebra be tested at all levels? Sure it can. Remember I said we could test the lower level English language learners. And if you look at this, it's a picture. There are words. They do need to have some reading skills to be successful on this test, but it is basic reading skills that you are going to probably have with your learners. If you want to do math, they need to have some reading skills to begin with. To do this one, which is basically a simple word problem, or this one, this is level 2, so it's increased in the vocabulary that you might have to read, but also there's a picture, so they could figure some things out using the picture as well. And does it get high enough? Well, here's level 5, and if you take some time to read this, this is lots of words, not too many, but there's lots of words there and lots of numbers. And then you have to figure out how many adults went in the pool in this case. It's not as simplistic as you might think at first. So as you read through, you think, huh, think through that before I could get the answer to that one. And certainly we get into ones where we have lots of exponents and combining those exponents and so forth. So just building on algebra skills. This is one that would be found in the level 6. So that's some of the questions that you might see. Certainly go back to that link that you'll find in your links to look at the sample test items and see more of those sample test items. If you want to order the tests, here is a link for ordering the tests. You would need to click on the test that you want. You can see they're actually marked with the red new, so you can get there. And then you would need to click on the Order Now button. The new tests are not yet in their catalog. I'm sure they will be soon. So you'd have to go through this way on the website to get the information that you need for ordering the tests. Here's a suggestion as to how much it might cost you depending upon how many you order. Remember, I've got right on the top there, test administration manual. You need one for every site that is doing the testing. So please make sure you have those. And then if you are interested in doing e-tests, the state has purchased the enhanced package. You'll see that the basic package is a little bit less. You get a few more reports in the enhanced package. So it just depends upon which direction you want to go. The state has distributed all of the tests that we purchased for this year, but perhaps there will be more in the next year. So certainly take a look. If you're interested, get yourselves ready to purchase some of the e-tests to try them out. So, we did it.
Marty, there was a question from
okay.
Mark from Dakota Prairie. Mark was wondering, are there state grants available to help with the costs of the new STEP series?
Not currently. I know the last time we had new tests, we did purchase some tests and distributed them to programs who requested. We don't have that funding yet. That might not come until the spring. So the answer right now, sorry, Mark, there's nothing right now available. It might come, but obviously you have to be transitioned by the 1st of July. If you go back, I know it's still a cost. But you can see here, you can get complete sets, which will give you 5 of each for $287.50. So that would get you started. You can get 5 of each or 10 of each. And I know that's not an insignificant amount, but maybe something that could be worked into a budget. Any further questions?
Nothing else from the chat, Marty.
Okay, well, I've got past time here, I think. Oh, it's exactly 11:45, so I guess we are at that time. And here's your links again. And Marissa has put those in the chat. So thank you all for coming today, and feel free to contact me if you have further questions about testing.
All right. Thank you so much, Marty. And thank you to everyone for being here.